One dark, cold evening, a girl was walking home from school when she was suddenly dragged into a van by some high school guys. They were on a mission to pick up girls, apparently, but not in the conventional sense. They literally wanted to pick girls up and put them in their vans so they could do the R word to her and then leave her by the side of the road afterwards, which is what they planned to do with this chick. What a bunch of animals. I hope they die gruesome deaths. The driver, however, didn't seem to share the same perverted and disgusting nature of the other guys. He told the guys this wasn't what he signed up for and tried to stop them, but they just told him that he would get his turn as soon as they were done. The guys then proceeded to rip off the girl's jacket to begin the deed. The driver couldn't bear to hear the girl's screams anymore, so he hit the brakes. After the car came to a stop, the girl came out from behind and told the guy to keep driving if he wanted to live. He was so confused, but after seeing what she did to his friends, he complied quietly. As soon as he got to the destination, he ran out and vomited. The girl then made a phone call to someone. By the time she turned her eyes away from the driver guy, he had run off, as he should. I'm not about to stand around a girl who's capable of slicing up a couple grown men in the back of a van so easily. The guy tried climbing a pile of garbage to see how to get out of there, but all he found was a small clearing in the middle of all that garbage. He also bumped into another guy. He tried asking that guy for help and explaining things to him to get him to help with his escape. But in the process of his begging, he managed to piss him off and the guy transformed into half a lion right in front of him. The lion guy was called Brute Leo, and he was a genetically enhanced human who apparently participated in fights called Killing Bites, and he was about to take on the girl from the van in a fight. The driver guy was still so confused about the whole thing, but he became worried about how the girl would fare against Leo. His worries were put to rest very quickly after she too transformed. She arrogantly walked up to Leo and started talking smack. She wanted all the smoke and was bringing all the heat, but Leo thought she was all talk, so he smacked her across the arena. The girl bounced back up and tried attacking again, but Leo was right there to stop her. Leo kept following her movements and it seemed like she was outclassed, but suddenly the tables turned when the girl bit off Leo's fingers. She then introduced herself as Brute Rattel like a badass. Leo was outraged and went to attack her again, but this time the girl finished him off with a special attack, and the guy was shocked to see that Rattel beat Leo. But the people who were watching via a satellite were even more shocked. Leo had won 100 killing bites. The fact that he lost, despite his record and experience, was unbelievable to them. The next day, the guy woke up in his room very frightened, but once he saw his familiar four walls, he thought it was just a bad dream and gave a sigh of relief. But his relief turned back into worry really quick when he saw Rattel sleeping next to him on the floor. He yelled very loudly and it woke Rattel up. He wondered why she was in his room, but then it came back to him. After the fight last night, he hugged Rattel and thanked her for winning, because if she had lost, he would be dead by now. Rattel was pissed at how clingy he was acting and shoved him off. She told him that her injuries would heal in a short amount of time. The guy quickly asked Rattel to leave, but she was hungry, so she made him take her out to eat. While they were eating, Rattel's guardian, Kido, came to join them. The guy thought Kido looked fishy, but he didn't want to be rude, so he went ahead to introduce himself as Yuya Nomoto. But Kido already knew everything about him, from his name to his school to even his dorm room and ID number. Yuya felt fear run through his body, but Kido told him not to be afraid. Kido then explained the whole situation to Yuya. He told him about the monsters known as therianthropes, the kind that Rattel, whose name was actually Hitomi, belonged to. Yuya asked why the therianthropes were being created at all, and Kido told Yuya about an organization of elite rich men who had been in power for over 400 years, and it was called Zaibatsu, and they had power all over Japan and parts of the world. They had already made it so that the killing of Yuya's friends looked like an accident. Yuya quickly apologized once again, but Hitomi didn't believe he was innocent. Kido did, however, which is why he entrusted 100 million yen to Yuya to use and stake on the next match Hitomi was to fight in. Later that night, Hitomi gave Yuya a list of things she needed and asked him to go get them. Yuya hesitated, but Hitomi said the magic words, "I'll kill you," and he ran off immediately. On his way back, a pretty lady called his attention to help her check something out. Yuya, being the wimp he was, said yes. The lady then opened her jacket to reveal she had nothing under. Yuya was entranced by the woman. Let's just say she had a lot on her chest, But staring wasn't for free, and the woman threw darts into Yuya's leg and nose. She was a therianthrope, and she demanded that Yuya tell her everything about Hitomi. Just then, Hitomi came along and snuck up on the woman. The woman swung at Hitomi, but she was too slow to hit her. Looks like another killing bites was about to go down. Hitomi avoided getting hit with any of the girl's spikes. It almost seemed like she was toying with him. This upset the girl in the jacket, and it made her transform fully. She then introduced herself as Brute Rowdy. She was a porcupine therianthrope. Rowdy revealed her plans to Hitomi and said that she wanted to drill Yuya for information about her and then kill him afterwards, but now she could just kill her instead. Turns out Hitomi killing Leo was a much bigger deal than expected, and it made waves in the world of killing bites. But Hitomi didn't care, she transformed, and just wanted to beat the quills out of Rowdy. So their fight began in earnest. Rowdy seemed to be quite experienced herself. She was pushing Hitomi back a lot with her quill attacks, one of which made it rain down quills on her. With such a massive attack, Rowdy was sure Hitomi was done for, and so was Yuya too. But just as Rowdy turned to continue torturing Yuya, Hitomi stood up and brushed off the attack like it was an acupuncture session. This Hitomi chick is tough as nails, man, damn. Rowdy turned around in disbelief, saying that her quills could pierce even metal, but Hitomi didn't care. She went in for the final attack and defeated her. But as Hitomi was about to deliver the killing blow, Yuya stopped her and told her there was no need for pointless killing since she had clearly won. Rowdy heard that and thought to take advantage, but she was quickly bashed away by a huge man from out of nowhere. The man went back with Yuya to his room and even treated his leg injury for him. Hitomi asked who he was, and he introduced himself as a brute for one of the 4 factions of the Zaibatsu, and his name was Ichinosuke Okajima. He came to Hitomi to ask her to join his faction. He assured her that if she did, there wouldn't be any more attempts on her life by other faction brutes, but of course, Hitomi refused. She said she didn't need to join any faction since she was the strongest, But just as Ichinosuke was losing hope of her joining, Yuya got a message from Shido. So did Hitomi as well. Shido had instructed her to join the Ishida faction temporarily, and she agreed. Talk about a mood swing. Hitomi always bends over and says yes anytime Shido calls. The next day, Yuya got rudely woken up by Hitomi. At first he was pissed off, but when he looked up, he suddenly lost all reason to be upset. The sight was marvelous. Hitomi snapped him back to reality and told him to get dressed. Yuya asked why she was in uniform, and she told him starting that day, she would be attending his school. When they got to school, Yuya was greeted by his friend, who seemed to be a geek as well. The friend went on about how geeks like them have no place in the world and should remain humble and dream, but as soon as he saw Hitomi beside Yuya, he was in disbelief. Never before had he been so close to a high school girl. What made him even more shocked was when Hitomi mentioned she was staying at Yuya's house. The friend Moriyama accepted his fate as a lesser being and told Yuya he would stay in the back seat, like the loser he is. Hitomi actually wanted to pay attention to the lecture, but she soon realized that the lecturer was old enough to pre-order the Bible. She couldn't hear anything he said, and the students were lost in their own fantasies. Hitomi took a bathroom break not too long after and tried calming herself down. She wasn't used to this boring, peaceful, and pointless lifestyle. As she was talking to herself, a random girl peeped into her stall and introduced herself. Her name was Aruza Nakanishi. She was a brute for the Yatsubishi faction. Of all places to do such, why a toilet? Did that surgery to become monsters? The girl didn't back off though. In fact, she grabbed Hitomi's panties and ran off with them. Hitomi was pissed about her panties, but she kept wondering how the girl was able to move so fast without even transforming. Aruza kept running at breakneck speeds away from Hitomi, and suddenly, she turned without warning and pounced on Hitomi. Hitomi was surprised that she could move this well, but all that went away as soon as Aruza tried to attack her. Instead of dodging, Hitomi went in to bite Aruza's hand. Aruza was so shocked that she started to think Hitomi might actually just be that strong and her defeating Leo wasn't a bluff. Aruza decided to take the fight seriously, but they got interrupted by a third party. It was a brute from another company and his benefactor. They had come to deliver the message to Aruza that Hitomi wasn't to be touched until the Killing Bites Destroyo tournament was over a week from now. The messenger couldn't even finish his sentences before Hitomi tried to jump him, but the bear brute blocked her and fended her off. Aruza then stopped her from engaging further. Once the messenger saw it was okay to come down, he went on his way with his brute. While that was going on, some pervy idiots were spying on Hitomi from a building top far away. They talked about how they planned to kidnap Hitomi for themselves, but they wanted to have a little fun while they were at it. Something tells me they're gonna regret attempting such. A bunch of guys walked in on Yuya and they couldn't believe their eyes. A nerd like Yuya was surrounded by 2 hot high school girls. It seemed like an impossible thing. If only they knew Yuya was a victim. Yuya tried leaving, but his nerd friends stopped him. They weren't gonna let him go until he helped them fulfill one of their fantasies. They saw Hitomi and Aruza earlier turning around transformed. The guys assumed it was a cosplay and they told Yuya to make the girls cosplay again. Hitomi obviously wasn't going to agree, but Aruza told her she still had a lot to learn. For starters, Aruza transformed her ears only. Hitomi couldn't do that, which made her realize she could stand to learn a thing or two from Aruza. Yuya, on the other hand, was about to explode from all the heavenly scenes he was seeing, so he ran out and waited there. He saw that Moriyama had brought a bunch of other students to witness this glorious moment as well. After a short wait period, the girls came out and the guys went absolutely nuts. Hitomi seemed curious as to why. They asked her for a pose and she wasn't sure what to do, but the moment she got into the swing of things, she actually started to enjoy herself. It was the first time Yuya had seen her like that outside of when she was eating. After the cosplay fiasco was over, they headed home. Hitomi tried playing the whole thing off as a bunch of guys just being guys, but Aruza knew she enjoyed it way more than that. Aruza told Yuya that he could go on without them. She planned on treating Hitomi to lunch, so Yuya went home peacefully, but his peace was once again interrupted by more people. What kind of security does that high school have anyway? But these weren't just any people, one of them was Leo, the brute that Hitomi beat a couple days ago. Yuya was so scared that he looked like he was going to his pants. A young girl from behind told Leo to stand down since he was scaring Yuya. The girl spoke up and introduced herself as Yoko Mitsukado. She was the granddaughter of the president of the Mitsukado faction. She had come there to tell Yuya to withdraw Hitomi from the Destroyo tournament. Yuya didn't even know what the tournament was. Poor guy. Ichinosuke spoke up and explained that it was a battle royale for brutes, one where only the winner came out alive. Yoko also told him that the battle was a sort of chess match and the person controlling the pieces was the financer, aka him. She asked him if he was willing to play knowing Hitomi's life was on the line like that. Yuya was very much concerned about Hitomi's life, but he didn't want to make such a big decision without her approval. So he told Yoko that he wasn't going to withdraw. Yoko got frustrated and walked out. In her car ride, she spoke angrily to Leo about the whole thing, saying that she thought Yuya was a smart person, but it seems she was mistaken. Yeah, I feel you, girl. As Yoko was complaining, an old man spoke from the shadows. It was her grandfather. He too was invested in the Destroyo match, but he asked Yoko how she planned to defeat Hitomi, and Yoko told him she would use the ace up her sleeve. The grandfather laughed and started to look forward to the Destroyo even more. At home, Hitomi had come back, and before Yuya could finish asking, she said yes to the tournament. But there was a problem. Ichinosuke told them they needed another person on their team. They began to scour all possible choices for teammates, but no one was agreeing. It seemed like hope was lost. So Ichinosuke decided to make a desperate play and ask a very unlikely candidate. She was a brute as well, but she wasn't very strong. In fact, she had lost all the backing she had before. Yuya kept wondering why they were even considering her, but Ichinosuke knew there were no other options. So Hitomi tagged in to try and convince her with force. When that didn't work, she tried rizzing her up, and that just made the girl run away. Hitomi couldn't be bothered with trying again, so she asked Yuya to go convince her instead. Yuya went against his will. Inaba, the rabbit girl, ran away to the park to relax there, so Yuya approached her and tried convincing her in a sweet tone. It seemed to be working too, but their moment was interrupted by a laser beam. When they turned around, it was another brute. She was shooting blood from her eyes as lasers. That's just disgusting. Inaba, being the wimp she was, started running, but the lizard brute caught up to her. Before the lizard could finish her off, Hitomi came and beat her up instead, thanks to the hearing of Inaba. When the lizard was retreating, Hitomi told her and her accomplice to make sure everyone knew it was Inaba who beat them instead of her, and they agreed. With that victory in mind, Inaba became confident that she could win anything else. Which just sounds like delusion to me, but oh well. She agreed to join Yuya and Hitomi. When Yuya was heading back home with Hitomi, he commended her for not killing the lizard girl and her accomplice. It seemed like his good nature had rubbed off on her a little. She then dragged him to a park so they could train for the Destroyo. Poor Yuya can't even catch a break with a broken leg. The day of the Killing Bites Destroyo had finally come, but things weren't quite what Yuya had imagined. For starters, the viewing center was a very luxurious place, with wine and fancy-dressed people from all over. Yuya thought I was in very bad taste for this kind of thing to be happening at this point. I mean, they were literally about to start killing each other in a matter of moments. But Inaba, Hitomi, and Ichinosuke were just chilling around and enjoying the party. While they were, Leo walked up to them and congratulated them on participating. He said he wouldn't be taking part this year, but he would wish them well from the sidelines. Just then, another competitor walked up to them. His name was Tiger, and he was apparently on the same level as Leo. Tiger was very disappointed that he wouldn't be facing Leo in this tournament, but Leo hadn't fully recovered from his fight with Hitomi. Tiger walked away quite pissed off, saying that the Destroyo this year would be very easy for him. After that drama was over, the lights at the party went out. A high-ranking personnel of the Killing Bites came out to make a few announcements. She then gave the mic to Kido to handle the rest. Kido came up and explained the rules of the Killing Bites Destroyo. Each team of 3 people were to enter an island together and move along a certain pattern that would be specified. If at any point 2 teams were to meet themselves, they would have to battle until one team completely killed the other or incapacitated them. After stating the rules, Kido went off stage. The brutes were urged to start making preparations. A few moments before the brutes went to fight, some officials from the Ashita faction came to beg Hitomi and Ichinosuke to make sure they won. Ichinosuke told them he couldn't guarantee anything, but he assured them he would definitely give it his all. With that, Hitomi, Ichinosuke, and Inaba got prepared to fight. On the island where they would fight, each team got into position. Hitomi was surprised at how the place looked. She wanted to remove the collars that were given to each player, but she was told if she did so, it would cost her the match, so she went on like that. The time had come for Yuya to move Hitomi like a chess piece. Yuya was a complete novice in this realm of things, so before the Destroyo started, he and Hitomi came up with a way of talking to each other through coded messages from the screen. At first, the people at the table were shocked that Yuya could predict the perfect spot for Hitomi to move to, but a few of them quickly realized that Yuya was just being controlled by Hitomi. One of which was Yoko. She got so offended that Yuya was just mindlessly following Hitomi. She planned to beat him by any means. Meanwhile, Hitomi had already found her first opponent. It was the brute bear from the other day. As soon as the MC declared their fight to start, Bear was raring to go. It was a battle of destructive force against recklessness. Bear remembered his conversation with Leo at the party before the match started. Leo told him that as long as he went full power with his strongest attack from the jump, he would win, and so he did just that. He charged straight ahead at Hitomi with his strongest attack, Bear Palm, but the attack was pointless because Hitomi defeated him with one strike. The financiers couldn't believe it, but Leo wasn't surprised seeing as he had faced her before. Her special attack, Slash, made all strategies seem meaningless. Unless your instincts and fangs were sharper than hers, Hitomi would always come out on top. Yoko seemed distraught, but she composed herself and reassured herself that she would crush Yuya with her players. Yuya wasn't even trying to compete with Yoko. Bro just wanted Hitomi to be alright. Back on the battleground, Ichinosuke was wandering around. He was hoping Hitomi was okay, because out of nowhere he was slashed in the back by Tiger. Tiger complained of boredom since everyone was so much weaker than him, but as he walked away, Ichinosuke stood back up and transformed. He had apparently isolated his back and transformed it beforehand, so the attack from Tiger didn't do as much damage. Remember that messenger from the other day with the bear? Yeah, he's a brute as well, apparently. He was sitting in a tree, observing the interaction between Tiger and Ichinosuke, but as soon as he revealed himself, another brute from an opposing faction came out of the shadows too. Ichinosuke thought they were going to jump him, and he began to fear for his life. But they made it clear that they were here to fight Tiger, because they knew that they couldn't take him individually and win. At this point, Ichinosuke became relieved and thought they could actually pull off beating Tiger. Things are about to get intense. The messenger with the scrawny body stepped up first to challenge the Tiger. but he was cut off by another brute who claimed he could take down Tiger on his own. He transformed into a crocodile, and without any hesitation, he lunged forward at Tiger. He and Tiger seemed to be on equal grounds. They both went blow for blow, with Crocodile keeping his distance at all times. Ichinosuke was a bit terrified, so he just stood there and watched. Crocodile kept giving Tiger a good fight, but suddenly someone else entered their fight. It was the messenger guy. He was a gorilla brute. Now that's just crazy. Why give the scrawny guy a gorilla? Anyway, the gorilla brute punched the lights out of Tiger, and Crocodile yelled at him to not interfere, but the gorilla thought the crocodile was being disrespectful by holding back his punches, so he stepped in. He was also getting bored of sitting on the sidelines. While they were both debating and puffing out their chests, Tiger took the chance to humble them both. He punched the lights out of the gorilla, and after jumping back and forth between trees for momentum, he slashed Crocodile and defeated him. Elsewhere, Tiger's younger sister was also in a battle of her own. Aruza had managed to chase down another brute to a remote location. The woman brute gave Aruza props for being able to track her so easily. Aruza then made her choose to give up so she wouldn't have to suffer much, and the woman did. She actually gave up, which should have been a big red flag for Aruza. No woman gives up a conflict without fighting first. It's not physically possible for them. As the woman gave up, her partner showed up from behind Aruza and wrapped around her. It was a Cobra brute. He constricted her very easily and then stuck his tail into her mouth, but Cobra slammed her into the ground and broke her arm. Aruza got up and tried to still hold her ground, but the other woman came and punched Aruza in the gut. What the heck? I thought she gave up. Tiger was just about to start fighting Ichinosuke when suddenly his financer told him to move towards Aruza and help her. The financer knew there were no cameras in the area where Aruza was, so he wanted Tiger to go and help out. But this was all according to plan. As Tiger was about to leave, Crocodile came back and bit his leg so he couldn't move. Yuya saw this and remembered that if a brute didn't obey the instructions he was given within a time limit, his collar would explode. He began to fear that Tiger might be cooked, but his fears would soon turn out worse. Tiger was confused as to why Crocodile was moving already. He thought he had cut deep enough for a kill. But Crocodile is used to fighting in murky places filled with germs and all sorts of bacteria. He was a lot tougher than he looked. Crocodile swung Tiger around the trees and made it so he couldn't move. It was a dire situation for him. Meanwhile, his sister was being pummeled by Cobra and Gecko. The man responsible for the team with Tiger and Aruza didn't even look concerned about them. He just laughed at how he fell for the trap set by his opponents. Yuya was disgusted and confused. How could they all easily give kill orders like that? It was now Yuya's turn to roll the dice. He could choose to leave his players where they were or move them. Out of fear for Aruza's life, he decided to send Hitomi to her. Hitomi got to Aruza just before Cobra was about to start his slimy and unholy acts on her. Hitomi tried attacking Cobra, but she was cut off by Gecko. Hitomi went to attack again, but Gecko gave her another sneak attack. At the viewing center, Yoko asked Yuya why he sent Hitomi to Aruza. He simply replied that he wanted to save her. Everyone in there laughed at him. Yoko just got furious and told him not to desecrate the killing bites any further. Since there was no camera around that area, the officials managed to get some there quickly, and as soon as they came up, it showed that Hitomi was in quite a pinch. She was being beaten up mercilessly by Gecko, to the point where Yuya feared she might actually lose. Yoko told him it was his fault for being naive, and Hitomi was about to die because of him. Yuya couldn't look at the screen anymore. He didn't want to witness Hitomi dying, but one of the people at the table told him to trust in Hitomi and not look away. Just then, Aruza managed to escape and slice Cobra's face in two. Hitomi told her she didn't need any help, but Aruza wasn't hearing it, so they decided to team up and take on the enemy together. Hitomi would face Cobra and Aruza would face Gecko. Their showdown was making everyone excited, tension filled the air. Many years ago, the rules on the kind of people that got the surgery to become therianthropes were very strict, and if there was so much as a parking ticket in your history, you wouldn't be allowed to participate. However, all of that changed when Shido became director of Killing Bites. He relaxed the rules and made it so that scum of all kinds could take the surgery and become powerful brutes. One of the results of that rule change was Cobra. He was part of a band of gangsters who were practically mafia. He had a very big affinity with the reptilian gene factor, and as a result, whenever he transformed, he no longer looked human in the slightest. But this obviously didn't faze Hitomi. In fact, she thought it would be fun. And with that thought, the brawl began. Cobra used his size to his advantage, making sure Hitomi had no room to recover, but she was agile enough to land a few hits and have him sweating. Eruza, on the other hand, wasn't doing so great. Gecko was pressing her real tight and she couldn't do much to counter her. She was still protecting her arm after it got dislocated earlier, but it was just a ploy to get Gecko overconfident. Eruza took that chance and slashed her, all while exclaiming that her plan to take out her brother was going to fail as well. Speaking of Tiger, he was still in a pinch, but his quick thinking made him grapple Crocodile. He figured if he was to explode, he might as well take out Crocodile too. Crocodile welcomed the threat, but as the countdown started, Ichinosuke rammed both of them and gave Tiger a chance to escape. Ichinosuke valued life above victory. He didn't think it was worth it to die for victory, but Crocodile didn't agree with him. He snuck up on Ichinosuke with a very furious look in his face. Ichinosuke was shocked that he had recovered from his earlier attack, but that wasn't all. He was also healing the wound he got from Tiger. Apparently he had such a strong immune system that injuries like that were minor to him. With his injuries healed, Crocodile was on a warpath towards Ichinosuke. Cobra was also on a warpath to Hitomi, but his plans were foiled by her fangs. She clawed at his body and got free from his constriction. She then positioned herself on the side of his busted eye, thinking it was his blind spot, but that was a mistake. Cobra uses his tongue to detect his prey, so even if he was blind, he could still see his prey perfectly. He swiped his tail and hit her to the ground. Hitomi was relentless and still got back up, but as soon as she did, she was knocked out by his poison mist. Cobra then decided it was time to carry out his unholy acts once again. He took Hitomi to an abandoned shed and whipped out his Cobra cannons. He had been looking forward to playing with Hitomi for so long, and now he had her to himself. Or so he thought. Hitomi woke up and sliced his cannons in half, causing Cobra to scream uncontrollably. Cobra was in too much pain to even formulate words properly. I don't like the guy, but I can understand. Just getting hit down there is enough to have me out like a light. And he's still standing after having them completely cut off. Could never be me. Once he was able to think straight again, he asked Hitomi why the poison didn't work on her, but she didn't care about any of that. She just wanted to beat the crap out of him. Cobra lunged at Hitomi with the most bloodlust he's had all day. But Hitomi slashed him in two and ended the fight. With Gecko, she also thought she had ended the fight, but Eruza stood up and was barely fazed by her last attack. Gecko thought to try a new attack, but when she saw that Hitomi was back, she knew Cobra lost and she was on her own. She decided to go for the kill and turn things up. At the viewing center, the audience was still going wild. Everyone who made fun of Yuya started commending him for choosing to go help Eruza, and now things were about to get interesting there. Meanwhile, Ichinosuke was fighting for his life against Crocodile. He was clearly no match for someone who could give even Tiger a run for his money. But just as Crocodile went in to finish off Ichinosuke, a tall and dark figure appeared out of nowhere. Crocodile was pissed someone else was coming to interrupt his fight, but Ichinosuke was scared for his life, and of course he belonged to Yoko. Yeah, this is gonna be a long fight. The dark figure was known as Kido, but that was about it. No one even knew what kind of beast he was. He was shrouded in complete mystery. But one thing Gorilla did know was that he was an environmentalist, which means that he hated anyone who would harm nature, and for them, he didn't spare their lives. Crocodile didn't care one bit about any of that. He just told Kido that he was in a bad mood, and if he came closer to him, he was going to kill him. And to further emphasize his point, he used his tail to wipe down a tree very easily. He called his tail a death mace, and one swing was powerful enough to injure even a hippo, or even kill most people. So Crocodile swung his tail at Kido, but he blocked it like it was nothing. Crocodile tried a couple more times, but he didn't make a dent in his skin, so he decided to just go for the kill and used his special, more death bite. But Kido ended it in one punch through the brain. The same Crocodile that everyone was having such a hard time against, Kido just punched a hole in his head. Yeah, Ichinosuke is cooked, I fear. To make the scene even more gruesome, Kido went up to the body of Crocodile and started punching the corpse. Gorilla told him to stop since he was already dead, but Kido said he wanted to break down Crocodile's body so that it could become fertilizer for the dead trees to grow back. Talk about brutal. I mean, I know it's for nature, but still. As all that was going on, one of the supporters for the Ishida faction, Mrs. Toe, decided to withdraw Ichinosuke away from the fight. Thank the heavens she did. But Gorilla saw him trying to leave and thought to try and kill him before he left. As he landed his attack on Ichinosuke, it looked like it hit, but he really missed. Speaking of retreating, it seemed like Gecko too had orders to retreat from the battle, so she ran away from Hitomi and AniRizzler to preserve herself. She was pissed that Cobra lost, but it didn't matter, as long as she was alive. As soon as she left, AniRizzler changed her attention to Hitomi and began fighting her instead. Like, damn, I just saved your life. Not even a hug. Speaking of hugs, Ichinosuke was hugging dirt after moving through tunnels for a while. He saw that it was Inaba's doing and he thanked her profusely, but Inaba confessed that she got carried away a little bit when she was digging and got lost. Ichinosuke wasn't even surprised. He just thanked her and told her that he would stay hidden for a while until he got himself back together. Inaba said she would go back to digging so she could cause a distraction, but Ichinosuke knew she just wanted to keep digging, and that decision came back to haunt her. She dug back to the spot where Ichinosuke was coming from and ran into Gorilla, who wasn't going to let her get by easily. Meanwhile, Hitomi was laying the beat down on AniRizzler as expected, but AniRizzler wasn't going down so easily. She too was putting up one heck of a fight, and she managed to pin down Hitomi. AniRizzler said she was going to kill her this time around, and as always, Hitomi wasn't afraid of her. But here's where it gets interesting. When AniRizzler went closer to Hitomi, she kissed her instead. Hitomi got flustered and pushed her off, but AniRizzler said she felt like kissing her instead of fighting. So the girls ended up being the ones engaging in unholy activities. Who would have thought? Speaking of the unthinkable, Inaba hadn't died yet in her battle with Gorilla. But not like she was doing anything significant, she just kept running. Since there was nothing else going on with the other players of interest, they took it back to Hitomi and AniRizzler attempting to make brute babies. They seemed to be going at it so passionately, but it turns out it wasn't of their own free will. Bummer, I thought we were about to have a little romance side quest in the middle of the fighting. The cause of their lustful performance was Brute Civet. Her powers allowed her to emit a powerful Aphrodisiac that turned battle excitement into nothing but lustful desires. It made Hitomi completely blinded with lust for AniRizzler and AniRizzler for Hitomi. Civet then quoted Hitomi about how she said the sharper fangs won battles, but Civet disproved that and said that it was the ability to remove those fangs and control your opponent that won battles instead. As the two girls were still going at it, AniRizzler told Hitomi to come with her to someplace else so they could continue in private, but hearing that triggered a memory in Hitomi. She remembered someone else asking her to follow them, but not in a lustful way. More like how you would ask your friend to trust you and take your hand kind of way. With that memory coming to mind, Hitomi managed to slip out of the trance and push back AniRizzler for good this time. Civet couldn't believe her eyes, no one had ever managed to break free from her Civet rap attack so soon. And what was more shocking was the fact that Hitomi broke free before AniRizzler. But luckily for her, Tiger came just in time to save her. Hitomi had been looking forward to finally fighting Tiger, and now she had the chance to go all out against him. Let's see if Hitomi finally meets her match, or if Tiger's all roar and no bite. The Zaibatsus were gathered in a special VIP room where they could see the entire viewing center from. Their topic of discussion was the outcome of the entire event. They had apparently already made some laws behind the scenes on the political front. One of those laws being the rights to conduct therianthrope surgeries at their own discretion. And they agreed that whoever won the Destroyo would take all the rights to it. One of the factions were already out of the running since he had lost all his men, which included Cobra and Crocodile, but he didn't seem to mind not being able to compete for those rights because he knew the real benefiters of it were the administration bureau that Shido heads since he manages all the tech used to create the brutes. He knew that Shido planned to have all the Zaibatsu in his pocket so he could have a lot of influence, but it didn't worry him much. It seemed like he had a plan in motion that would destroy all of Shindo's plans. Speaking of plans, Hitomi was going to need one if she wanted to beat Tiger. He was the last Destroyo winner for a reason, and he definitely wasn't going down easily. Hitomi got bored of waiting for him to engage, so she made the first move. Tiger seamlessly evaded all of her attacks. He didn't waste any movement at all. Civet wanted to jump in and attack Hitomi as well, but AniRizzler warned her that she could get caught up in the fight and get messed up pretty badly if she did. She knew better than anyone how terrifying her brother could be when he sets his eyes on a target. Hitomi knew she was at a disadvantage with all three of them there, so she tried to end things quickly. She used her special move Slash on him, but for some reason it didn't connect. That was when Tiger said that her win against Leo was a total fluke and shouldn't have happened. You might be wondering why he made such claims, but before I explain, let's check up on our favorite rabbit and see how she's doing. It wasn't a great sight. She still didn't have any scratches on her, but all she had been doing was running away very quickly. Rabbits excelled at running, and it seemed like that's all Inaba was good for. Gorilla was tired of chasing her. He had every advantage against her in the jungle, yet he still couldn't catch up to her. As Gorilla kept chasing her, he received orders to get rid of the rabbit, so he started taking the chase seriously. He broke off some trees and threw them at Inaba. Inaba saw a nearby hole and thought to escape through it, but Gorilla blocked it with a tree. As he was about to kill Inaba off, someone came through the forest to where they were. It was Kido. He reprimanded Gorilla for destroying the trees, or as Kido put it, for bullying nature. Gorilla first thought to apologize and talk him down like a sensible person, but he decided to not use his sense and punched him in the face instead. Like, why? Didn't he see what he did to Crocodile? Why would he anger him like that? From that point on, his fate was practically sealed. Gorilla kept adding fire to the flame by throwing more trees at the already angered Kido, and he thought he could finally do him in with his special move, Gorilla Hammer, but Kido once again defeated his enemy with one attack. He cleaved Gorilla in two and left his body parts just lying on the ground. Inaba peed herself out of fear, and her very short and basic life flashed before her eyes. But her life was spared thanks to Kido receiving a message telling him to go somewhere else quickly. Inaba wanted to quietly stay where she was and wait the whole thing out, but she remembered that she had a role to play in all of this. So she headed straight to Hitomi to tell her about Kido and his true nature. Meanwhile, Hitomi had her hands full with Tiger. Cobra tried to sneak attack her from behind, but it was a useless attempt. Hitomi spared his life and even told the camera crew to get him medical attention before he died. Tiger commended her for choosing to spare his life, but he pointed out that Leo also spared her in their fight, and that was why she won. Turns out Leo wasn't so eager for fights as much as Tiger. A lion never bothers fighting weak prey. And Leo had that same philosophy. He never bothered fighting at full strength until he had drawn out the power of his opponents. Tiger knew Leo went easy on Hitomi, but he was pissed that she desecrated his kindness with her underhanded tactics, and so he vowed never to acknowledge her win over him. Hitomi went silent as if bracing herself for their next exchange, but it was pointless. Tiger moved out of sight so quickly, and before Hitomi knew what was happening, she was being hit into the shed up ahead. It was one of Tiger's movement techniques called Bako. He uses his tremendous leg strength to enter your blind spot and then attacks you while you're disorientated by his disappearance with his decisive blow, Kohu. Iruza knew this move all too well after seeing him use it against all his opponents, and that ended the match. But she was shocked when Tiger told Hitomi to get up. Hitomi somehow managed to dodge that attack even though she hadn't seen it before. She was all bloodied up, but it didn't look like she was down for the count just yet. The viewing center went wild with excitement. This was what they came to see, pure entertainment that would have you on the edge of your seats for hours wondering what would happen next. Hitomi was still standing after taking Tiger's Kohu head on. It shocked everyone, but Tiger just stayed focused on his opponent. Hitomi took a stance that she hadn't done before. It didn't faze Tiger, and he just went in for another Bako. This time he didn't land the Kohu cleanly. Hitomi was learning the timing. Since the Bako was meant to disorient his prey so he could counterattack, with Hitomi staying still when he did Bako, it made it hard for him to perform the counterattack, but that doesn't mean he couldn't do it. Hitomi took her stance again, with her being sure that she could beat the Kohu this time. But all the damage she had been taking was finally catching up to her. Even though the Kohu didn't land cleanly, it still did a lot of damage. Despite all this, Hitomi took her stance again. She wasn't going down without a fight, and as a response to that, Tiger used his most powerful form. He wanted to end it in one final blow. As they were about to clash, Inaba popped up from the ground and warned Hitomi about Kido, but as soon as she saw Tiger, she got scared and ran into the civet wrap created by Civet. Inaba really wasn't made for fighting at all. Once Inaba was out of order, Civet held her up to watch as Tiger killed Hitomi. Tiger took a lower position to generate even more speed from his Bako so he could land the Kohu properly. Iruza thought this was the end for Hitomi. At the viewing center, even the spectators could see that the end was near for Hitomi. Yoko, with her stupid mouth, kept telling Yuya that he had killed Hitomi because of his actions. She asked him how it felt to be a murderer, and Yuya couldn't do anything other than cower in fear. He realized Hitomi could really die all because of his decisions, but in that moment, he remembered what life with Hitomi had been like the past few weeks. He had come to learn the sweet and fun side of her. Sure, there were times when she acted in very unpleasant ways to him, but he always knew that she trusted him and they would be partners through it all. With that in mind, he stood up and declared that he wasn't going to roll the dice and move Hitomi. He said he was going to leave her to fight Tiger and that wasn't going to change. Yoko thought he had lost his mind with the way he was talking. She reminded him that if Hitomi died, it would be completely his fault. But Yuya held his ground and didn't waver in his determination. So Hitomi and Tiger took their stances and moved to attack. But Kido cut in and attacked Hitomi from her blind spot. This seemingly took her out of the fight. All of this was according to Yoko's plan. She had planned to use Kido to take out Tiger from the competition. But if they were in the forest, Kido would be too focused on protecting nature and Moriso. They would be in the terrain of Tiger and Kido would be at a massive disadvantage. So keeping Tiger in that open place until Kido got there was Yoko's plan all along, and Hitomi was a help in it. Yoko was really ready to use any means necessary to win. Hitomi got back up after that heavy attack from Kido, but before she could mount a counterattack, Kido knocked her down again. She was completely helpless against his attacks. As Kido went in to finish off Hitomi, Tiger interrupted and landed a sneak attack on Hitomi, but it was for reasons you wouldn't expect. Tiger wasn't trying to help Hitomi or anything nice like that. He was simply pissed that Kido ignored him and went straight for Hitomi. And he was also pissed that Kido stole his kill. With that anger fueling him, Tiger unleashed a barrage of attacks on Kido. Kido didn't seem to flinch, so Tiger tried a different approach, but all he realized was that Kido's skin was as hard as steel. Meanwhile, Inaba tried escaping from Civet. She first jumped out of her clutches and then faked being unable to move properly. But when Civet went in to attack her, she fell through a hole created by Inaba. Before she could get out of it and attack, Inaba jumped back on her and buried her in the hole quickly. Tiger had unleashed all his heavy attacks and it seemed like nothing was working. He would soon find out why. Kido was a pangolin brute. His skin might as well have been made of metal. He was covered in his tough scales from top to bottom, and with strength like his, he was virtually unstoppable. It's no wonder Yoko was so confident that she would win the whole tournament. Personally, I would be too if I had that walking armored tank as my player. With Yoko's grin on her face and the shock from all the audience at the viewing center, this Destroyo Battle Royale had taken another very interesting turn. Kido's appearance truly made him look like a monster. His scales were like blades and each one could be used as a weapon. He had the perfect offense and defense, but that wasn't going to stop Tiger. He launched a flurry of attacks at Kido, all of which were repelled with ease. Inaba saw this as a chance to go over and help Hitomi, but upon seeing how badly she was beaten up, she couldn't think of anything to do to help her. Tiger, on the other hand, didn't ask for help from anyone. He kept up his attacks with the mind of eventually getting Kido on his back so he could strike his abdomen. But Kido was a step ahead of him and covered his body up like an armadillo. Tiger was offended by this. He thought Kido was retreating into his shell and refusing to fight him. But this was all just a play to catch Tiger slipping, and Kido did just that. When Tiger went to strike him again, he opened his shell for a brief moment and captured his arm. Once he did, he spun his shell very fast and cut off Tiger's arm. Aruza saw this and begged Tiger to retreat, but he was stubborn. He didn't care if he died. Once his prey was in front of him, he wasn't gonna stop until I was dead. What a stupid way of thinking. If I were in his shoes, I'd be out of there faster than butter in my hands. Anyway, Tiger was about to regret not retreating. But he got saved as Ichinosuke jumped in and stopped Kido in his tracks. Ichinosuke knew that he couldn't break through his defenses, but he was confident that he could match Kido in power. But he was wrong. So very wrong. Kido saw right through his plans and punctured Ichinosuke in the belly, causing him to fall on the floor. Tiger used that opportunity to sneak up on Kido, and he managed to not only land an attack, he cut out Kido's eye. However, that move would cost him, because Kido got enraged after losing his eye, which is normal at this point. I mean, earlier in the match, we saw Cobra lose his, cannons like it was nothing. But unlike Cobra, Kido actually did something after losing a body part. He punctured Tiger in the stomach as well, which made Yoko declare her victory early. She felt so confident that there was no one else to stop her, so she insulted all the other viewers in the audience and began claiming her victory already. But things were about to get interesting. Back with Inaba, she decided to dig her and Hitomi out of danger and get to safety. But just then, Hitomi had an awakening of some sorts and jumped back into the battle. Her appearance changed and Yuya was confused as to what could be going on. Shido explained that it was her true form. Turns out Hitomi didn't undergo the therianthrope surgery, she was born with her powers. And over time, her abilities and instincts had been growing until the day she could finally take her true form. She was the perfect fusion between human and beast. Shido flashed back to when he first met Hitomi. She was a little girl who roamed the streets of Hong Kong, taking from everyone and eating whatever she could get her hands on. Nobody knew where she came from or what her name was. Heck, they didn't even know what she was. So they called her the Origin. Or at least that's what Shido called her. He tried to make friends with her when he first encountered her, but she bit his hand and ran away. On his next encounter, he brought some more food to try and get closer to her with that, but she just clawed at him and he ran off. He kept coming back, each time with different things to use and appeal to her. After a while, he learned she likes sweets and started bringing more of that. Then later, he started to bring some clothes for her as well. The first few he brought weren't okay by her, but eventually he brought something she liked, and it made him happy. He was making progress. Slow, yes, but progress nonetheless. His colleagues, however, were starting to worry about him. He would always come back with new scars, and they warned him to stop trying to get so close to her. But he wouldn't listen. He had a feeling that Hitomi was more than meets the eye, and he wanted to find out what it was. But his colleague couldn't stand his delusion. But that wasn't gonna happen, obviously. He went straight to Hitomi and told her all about what his partner said. While he was talking, Hitomi finally spoke. She repeated a word he said, and it made his eyes light up so brightly. He asked her to say his name, and she did. Shido was over the moon with happiness, but it was cut short when his colleague shot Hitomi in the back with a tranquilizer. Hitomi quickly ran away into the darkness. Shido punched his colleague in the face and told him that he had done something extremely dangerous by taking away her mobility. She was a known thief, and if the mafia that controlled the area caught her, she was as good as dead. Shido ran to find her, but when he did, she was surrounded by the mafia goons. Shido begged them not to hurt her, but they said they were going to butcher her and skin her to sell off. Shido pushed them aside to protect her, and they started beating on him, but his assistant quickly came and beat up the bad guys. Shido looked at Hitomi and told her to come with him, and that was the first time Hitomi ever became human-like. Now, she had connected with her beast nature again and was ready to take on the monster known as Kido. She used insane speed to headbutt Kido in the stomach and then proceeded to climb on his tail. She was excited to play with Kido, saying he was sturdy enough to handle her attacks and not die on her easily. Did that awakening scatter her brains? I think she has forgotten the beatdown Kido gave her a while ago. The audience and the financiers at the table were shocked at Hitomi's transformation, Yuya more than anyone else. He had never seen Hitomi so alive and jumpy. Yoko, on the other hand, was starting to regret her earlier outburst of victory declaration. Mrs. To asked whether Yoko had planned for Hitomi's transformation, since she saw that Yoko had begun to get flustered. But Yoko tried to brush it off like it was nothing, and said that everything was going according to her plan. While she was in there putting up facades, Kido was out there getting toyed with. Not like Hitomi had the clear upper hand or anything, but she just seemed to be playing around rather than going for the kill, all while keeping up with Kido's attacks. Which is crazy impressive considering she couldn't even see his attacks coming a while ago. Hitomi began clawing at Kido's scales, but there was no dent. Kido still had the upper hand in terms of defense. With that in mind, he lunged forward at Hitomi with an attack, but Hitomi clashed with him, and they created a sonic wave that went through the whole viewing center. Hitomi definitely seemed to be able to hold her own better, but she took it a step further. She said that Kido would be one of the easiest opponents she had ever faced. Then she slashed him from his torso up to the already cut out eye. As you can imagine, this pissed the hell out of Kido, but instead of continuing his attack, he went into his defensive shield. Hitomi saw that she couldn't break the shield, so she kicked it like a ball into the trees. Seeing that he destroyed the very nature he swore on his mother's life to protect, Kido snapped and sliced off Hitomi's arm in one attack. He then transformed into an even bigger menace and grew stronger as well. Hitomi was wailing in pain for a while, but she calmed herself down by biting her other hand. Not sure how that helps in any way, but hey, no point in trying to make sense of things now. Hitomi avoided a bunch of his attacks and then went on the offensive once more. She saw an opening, but Kido shut her down quickly. He followed it up with a barrage of attacks and ended it by piercing her while she was on her back with his tail. All hope seemed lost and Kido went in for the kill, but Hitomi jumped off the ground and grabbed her torn off arm. She then threw it at Kido, but as he swiped it away, she appeared in his front and stuck her hand down his throat. And with that, she ended Kido. The crowd went wild. Everyone couldn't believe their eyes. The great Kido, who seemed like an impenetrable fortress, was actually felled, and it was done by none other than Hitomi herself. The crowd went wild again. It was a result that no one predicted. Yoko in particular was about to lose her mind. She was unable to comprehend the fact that Kido just lost, especially after declaring victory earlier. Embarrassment and shock filled her face, but the situation got bad very quickly. Kido stood back up like a zombie, and he had killing intent written all over his face. His target seemed to be Hitomi. As he went in to kill her, Iruza stepped in and sliced his throat, killing him once and for all. Yoko passed out. Her ticket to victory was defeated, and she had successfully embarrassed herself as well. Yuya was just glad that Hitomi was alive and well. Iruza seemed to be the last brute standing. She spared Hitomi and didn't kill her because of the assistance she gave her in the tournament. But just as they were about to crown Iruza the winner of the Killing Bites Destroyo, Inaba woke up and started moving around. She wondered where she was and why she was there, but as soon as she saw the face of Iruza, everything came back to her. She tried to run, but Iruza is a cheetah. There wasn't a world where Inaba could outrun Iruza, so guess what Inaba did? Yup, she just tried running again, but this time, things took an interesting turn. While Iruza prepared to chase down Inaba, she tripped on a pebble and at the same time ran into the feet of Inaba. By the time Inaba looked behind her, she saw Iruza passed out on the floor, and just like that, Inaba won the Destroyo as the last player standing. The Zaibatsu were talking in their VIP room about the outcome of the match. It was clear that tension was at an all-time high, but what shocked everyone was when the Ishida Zaibatsu changed from his timid demeanor to a cocky one instead. He had been hoping for such an outcome in the Destroyo, and now that his team won and he got full control over the laws, he had no reason to play the timid and shy man anymore. But it seemed like one of the other Zaibatsus had something in mind. And he did. Suddenly the cameras went out round the whole arena. The audience in the viewing center were confused as to what was going on. Yuya in particular was worried about when Hitomi would receive treatment for her wounds. All signs pointed to one man, the Sumitomo Zaibatsu. He had hired a bunch of chameleon snipers to take out the rest of the players still standing, aka the winner, which would make it so that there was no winner of the Destroyo. Up until the very end, the drama still runs thick. Looks like there is still some more left to unfold. Inaba had managed to stop Hitomi from bleeding out too much, but she wondered why the rescue crew hadn't come out to help the injured players. Just then, she heard a noise and dodged instinctively, which was the right call. The chameleons were impressed at how she was able to detect them and still react, but they weren't going to miss the second time. And they didn't. With their second attack, one of them managed to wrap Inaba in her tongue, and just as another chameleon was about to pierce her skull, Hitomi woke up and interrupted them. It seemed unreal that she was still moving after everything that had happened. I guess Hitomi is just that tough. Or I spoke too soon, because after she unleashed a flurry of attacks, she flopped back down to the ground. Those injuries were still affecting her. As the chameleon was going in to deliver the final blow, or should I say tongue strike, a woman from out of nowhere jumped down and beat the color out of him, along with the rest of the chameleons. Back at the viewing center, the MC restored their viewing to tell them that she was on the scene to interview Inaba as the winner. Yuya was just glad that Hitomi seemed to be as okay as she could be. Meanwhile, Shido had exposed the plans of Sumitomo. He told the other Zaibatsus about how he planned to nullify the outcome of the Destroyo by killing all standing players and the winner. Sumitomo didn't even deny it. He chose to openly accept it. He admitted his ways were bad, but he said he was never going to accept the ways of Shido. And that was fine, really, because he was put down in the next couple of minutes by Leo. His crimes for sullying the Killing Bites was an unforgivable one, punishable by death. But there was one more person who was to be punished for his crimes. It was the Mitsukado Zaibatsu. He had been keeping the rights to the therianthrope surgery for years because of how much profit he got from it, and he wasn't willing to let it go. But Mitsukado stood up and told them that there was no one who could punish him for his crimes anyway. But he was sorely mistaken, because Leo right then stabbed him clean through the chest. He too was angry at Mitsukado for trying to control him all these years with his power and influence. Yoko was trying to recover from her loss. She thought about how she could tell her grandfather and face him after losing Pangolin and the rest of the game. Once she saw her dead grandfather on the table, she got closer and saw him in a pool of his own blood. Shido came out of the shadows and told Yoko that her grandfather died of a heart attack, but Yoko was clearly not buying any of that nonsense. So Shido stopped playing around and told her calmly that she was screwed. She didn't quite understand, so Yatsubishi came out of the shadows as well, and explained to her that he, Shido, and the Ashida Zaibatsu had agreed that the death of her grandfather was in the best interest of everyone. Yoko couldn't believe her ears. Out of anger, she ordered Leo to kill all of them, but Leo told her he serves only himself. With all that settled, Shido and the rest of the Zaibatsu went down to attend the award ceremony. Yoko was distraught. Never before had she been in such a bleak situation. Leo asked her how it felt to be used as a pawn for once, and she tried yelling at him, but he reminded her of her position in the hierarchy of things and told her he'd let her live if she submitted to him. Of course, she didn't resist, and Leo had his way with her. Not like she had any choice. It was either that or get stabbed through the chest. I'd open my legs too if I were Yoko. Anyway, 2 weeks passed and Yuya went back to his normal college life. He attended classes, hung out with his geek friends, and his room was back to being quiet again. But ever since he met Hitomi, he had changed from his old passive self who couldn't stand up for himself for anything. He even got into fights now. Although that's not exactly something to be proud of. He also had a stack of 300 million yen in his room. He was too scared to open it, but seeing it on a daily basis was proof that all of what happened in the Killing Bites Destroyo actually happened. One day while he was in his room peacefully, he got a text from Hitomi saying he should come to the spot. He immediately knew which spit and went back there as fast as possible. When he got there, he started to doubt that he got the right place, but Hitomi showed up with a cast around her arm and a big smile. He ran up to her and there was a little awkward silence for a bit, but he broke the silence by starting to thank her profusely. Hitomi didn't think she merited any thanks, but Yuya explained that during the Destroyo, even though the initial plan was for him to just follow her lead, him making his own decisions led to him finally understanding her saying that the one with the sharpest fangs win. To him, it meant that the one with the strongest will to stand on their choices and determined to see it through would always pull through victorious. Hitomi blushed a little. It was almost like he was confessing his feelings for her, but Yuya said it was nothing like that and he just cared about her as a person. Bro just fumbled the bag so badly and Hitomi still thanked him for everything anyway. But suddenly she slashed him across the chest and killed him. She explained to his dead body that Shido ordered her to kill him. Apparently the existence of Yuya would hinder the progress of his plans for the future. How on earth could someone like Yuya hinder anyone's plans? Bro was only a hindrance to himself. Nah, screw Shido, man. I hate him. I'm sure Hitomi didn't even want to do this, but because Shido asked, she couldn't say no. But on the way home, she cried for what she did. A few months passed, and it was time for a new Destroyo. People from all around had come to compete, but one player in particular seemed all too familiar. I wonder how his story would turn out.